The champagne flute shattered against marble. Crystal shards scattered across the floor of Lumiere, catching light from the chandelier like tiny diamonds. Aria Collins didn't flinch. She'd worked at this five-star Manhattan restaurant for 7 years without a single complaint. She knew how to handle difficult customers. But Victoria Sterling wasn't difficult. She was poison wrapped in Chanel. "This table is filthy," Victoria announced, her voice cutting through the dinner crowd's murmur. She dragged one manicured finger across the spotless white tablecloth. "And where is our bread? We've been sitting here for 10 minutes." Aria approached with the professional smile she'd perfected over thousands of shifts. "Good evening, Mrs. Sterling. My apologies for any delay. Here's our artisan bread selection, fresh from the oven." Victoria picked up a piece, examined it like evidence of a crime, then dropped it back into the basket with theatrical disgust. "Hard as concrete. Do they teach you nothing in this establishment?" Her 3 lunch companions shifted uncomfortably. They knew Victoria's reputation. Everyone in New York's elite circles did. The Sterling family name carried weight that crushed anyone who stood in its way. Aria kept her voice steady. "I'd be happy to bring a different selection if you prefer." "No need." Victoria shoved the basket toward the edge of the table. "Seeing this incompetence has already ruined my appetite." At 27, Aria had learned to swallow humiliation. She'd been doing it since her parents died 4 years ago in a car accident that left her drowning in medical debt from her mother's cancer treatment. She'd been doing it every day she walked past the principal's office at her brother Ethan's private school, knowing one missed tuition payment would destroy his dream of becoming a doctor. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not today, not ever. Victoria continued her performance throughout lunch. The soup was too cold. The wine temperature was wrong. The silverware had imaginary water spots. Each complaint grew louder, designed for maximum audience impact. "This waitress clearly wasn't trained properly," Victoria told her friends, voice pitched to carry across the dining room. "I wonder how she keeps employment here." Aria felt heat crawl up her neck. Around them, other diners pretended not to watch while hanging on every word. Then Victoria made her move. She lifted her wine glass, paused dramatically, then deliberately tipped it onto her own white Valentino dress. The deep red liquid spread across expensive fabric like blood. "Look what you did," Victoria shrieked, pointing directly at Aria. "You clumsy fool, you bumped into me." "Ma'am, I was standing 3 feet away from your table," Aria replied calmly. "I didn't touch you." "How dare you call me a liar?" Victoria stood, her face flushed with manufactured outrage. "This dress costs more than you earn in 6 months. I demand you apologize, on your knees, right now." The restaurant fell silent. Even the kitchen noise seemed to stop. Every eye turned toward their table. James Morrison, the restaurant manager, materialized instantly. Aria had known him for 7 years. They'd worked holiday shifts together, covered for each other during emergencies, shared coffee on slow Tuesday afternoons. He looked at her with panic in his eyes. "Mrs. Sterling, please, let's resolve this quietly," James said, his voice shaking. "Aria, apologize to Mrs. Sterling immediately." Aria stared at him. "Mr. Morrison, you know I didn't do anything wrong." "Aria," his voice cracked, "apologize now or you're fired." 7 years. 7 years of double shifts and aching feet. 7 years of smiling through exhaustion. 7 years of putting Ethan first, always. And now, she was supposed to kneel and lie to protect a woman who believed her money made her untouchable. Victoria crossed her arms, triumph glittering in her eyes. "I'm waiting." Something inside Aria didn't break. It sharpened. She looked at Victoria's main course. Seared duck breast with cherry reduction and roasted vegetables. The house specialty. "You want an apology." Aria picked up the plate with both hands. Time seemed to slow. She saw James's mouth open in warning, saw Victoria's eyes widen in disbelief, saw the other diners lean forward. "Here's my apology." Arya appended the entire plate over Victoria Sterling's head. Sauce dripped down platinum hair. Duck breast slid across a silk-covered shoulder. Roasted vegetables tumbled into her lap. Cherry reduction stained the Valentino dress beyond any possibility of salvation. The restaurant existed in absolute silence for 3 heartbeats. Then Victoria exploded. "You insane bitch," she screamed, sauce dripping from her chin. "I'll destroy you. I'll sue you for everything you have and everything you'll ever earn. Do you know who I am? Do you know what my family can do to you?" She whirled on James. "Call the police. I want her arrested. I want this restaurant shut down. Every single one of you will pay for this." Arya calmly untied her apron, the white fabric she'd worn like armor for 7 years. She folded it carefully and set it on the table beside the spreading sauce. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice clear and steady, "you can sue me. You can use your family's money and power to destroy my career. But there's one thing you can't take: my dignity. I'd rather lose everything than kneel and apologize for something I didn't do." She turned to James. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for 7 years, but I can't work somewhere that rewards bullies and punishes honesty." Then Arya walked out, head high, spine straight, each step deliberate across the gleaming floor. She didn't run, didn't look back, just walked like a queen leaving her kingdom. Behind her, Victoria's screams echoed off marble walls. Diners whispered and phones appeared, recording the aftermath. And in the darkest corner of Lumiere, where chandelier light barely reached, a man sat alone. Daniel Park had been watching the entire scene unfold. As the billionaire Mafia boss Vincent Sterling's right hand, he'd been assigned to monitor Vincent's mother whenever she ventured out. Vincent knew his mother's temper created problems the family didn't need. But tonight, Daniel had witnessed something unprecedented. An ordinary woman with no money, no connections, no protection had stood up to Victoria Sterling and walked away like royalty. Daniel pulled out his phone. He'd recorded everything from the moment Victoria started her harassment. His finger moved across the screen, sending the video to Vincent with a brief message. "You need to see this." Then Daniel stood, left cash on the table, and walked out into the Manhattan night. Behind him, Victoria still shrieked about lawsuits and revenge. But Daniel knew the most important thing wasn't her rage. It was the look in that waitress's eyes when she chose dignity over survival. A look with no fear, no regret, only fierce, unbreakable pride. And he had a feeling the billionaire Mafia boss would want to know about this woman named Arya Collins. The November wind hit Arya's face like a slap the moment she stepped onto the sidewalk. All the strength that had carried her through the confrontation drained away, leaving her hollow and shaking. She gripped a lamppost to keep from collapsing. Her legs trembled. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. What had she done? She just dumped food on the head of Victoria Sterling, mother of Vincent Sterling, one of the most powerful men in New York. A man who owned a chain of luxury hotels and, according to rumors, controlled half the city's underground operations. Her phone felt heavy as lead when she pulled it from her pocket. Ethan's smiling face filled the wallpaper. 14 years old, wearing his school uniform, his whole future ahead of him. A future she just destroyed. She called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Arya, why are you calling? Your shift isn't over yet." "Something happened at work." Her voice came out rough. "I'm coming home early. Don't worry, I'll explain everything when I get there." "Are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine, Ethan, just tired. Keep doing your homework, I'll be home soon." She ended the call before he could ask more questions, before her voice broke completely. The bus ride to their small Brooklyn apartment passed in a blur. Arya stared out the window, watching the city lights slide by, and the numbers started adding up in her head. Rent due next week, $1,800. Utilities, $200. Medical debt payment, $850. Ethan's school tuition, $950. And now she had no job, no income, no prospects. Worse, she'd provoked the Sterling family. According to everything she'd heard, they could make people disappear if they wanted to. Who would hire her now? The restaurant industry was a small world. Everyone talked. The girl who dumped food on Victoria Sterling's head would never work again. Tears slid down Arya's cheeks. She turned her face to the window so no one would see. Had she been selfish? Had she put her pride above Ethan's future? But then she remembered Victoria's triumphant smile when she demanded Arya kneel. Remembered the humiliation of being forced to lie in front of dozens of people. And she knew if she could choose again, she'd do the same thing. Some things couldn't be sold. Dignity was one of them. The apartment door opened before Arya could turn her key. Ethan stood there, his homework abandoned on the desk behind him, his face tight with worry. "What happened?" he asked immediately. Arya hung up her coat and sat on their worn sofa. Ethan sat beside her, waiting. She told him everything. Victoria's harassment, the wine, the ultimatum, the decision to choose self-respect over survival. When she finished, silence filled their tiny home. "You lost your job," Ethan said quietly. "Yes." "So, what are we going to do?" The question no 14-year-old should have to ask. The burden no child should carry. "I'll find something else," Arya said, trying to sound confident. "I have 7 years of experience. Someone will hire me." "You made the Sterlings angry." Ethan's voice was flat. "Everyone knows who they are. Nobody will dare touch someone they hate." Arya didn't know how to answer because he was right. Then Ethan did something that shattered her heart. He turned to look directly into her eyes, and instead of blame or fear, she saw something else entirely. Pride. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. "She had no right to treat you like that. Nobody has the right to make you kneel for something you didn't do." "Ethan, do you remember what Mom always said?" He cut her off. "She said money can be lost and earned again, but once you lose your self-respect, you never get it back. She said you can be poor, but you can never be a coward." Arya's eyes filled with tears. Their mother had said that from her hospital bed, her body ravaged by chemotherapy, still trying to teach them how to live with honor. "I'm scared I was selfish," Arya whispered. "I'm scared that because of my dignity, you'll have to suffer." Ethan shook his head hard. "I'd rather quit school than watch you be humiliated like that. I'd rather get a part-time job. I'd rather eat ramen every day than see you bow to someone like her." He took her hands. "You raised me for 4 years. You sacrificed everything for me, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud that my sister isn't the kind of person who submits to injustice." Arya pulled him into her arms, holding tight. Ethan hugged her back, his shoulders shaking. They sat there in their small apartment, holding each other as Manhattan's lights glowed through the window. They didn't have money. They didn't have power. They didn't have protection. But they had each other. "We're going to be okay," Arya whispered. "I don't know how, but we're going to be okay." "I believe you," Ethan said. "And if the whole world turns against us, we'll still have each other." That night, they slept on the sofa like they had in those first terrible days after their parents died, when the loneliness had been too much to bear alone. Arya didn't know that tomorrow morning, her life would change in ways she couldn't imagine. Morning sunlight woke Arya from restless sleep. Ethan was still curled beside her, breathing steadily. She gently moved his arm and went to make coffee, trying not to think about the day ahead. Her phone buzzed. The screen showed a name that made her heart skip: Rachel Lumiere. Rachel was her closest friend from work. Arya answered immediately. Arya, oh my God, are you on social media right now? Rachel's voice came out breathless. What? No, why? Your video is everywhere. Someone recorded the whole thing and posted it online. It's gone completely viral. Millions of views overnight. There's a hashtag trending, Brave Waitress. You have to look. Arya's hands shook as she opened her social media app. The video already had over 6 million views. Comments flooded in like a waterfall. Finally, someone had the guts to stand up to these arrogant rich people. I would do the exact same thing. Dignity isn't for sale. She's a hero. That woman got what she deserved. But not everyone supported her. Unprofessional, she deserved to be fired. She just destroyed her career over one moment of stupidity. She'll never work again. She touched Victoria Sterling's mother. Pray for her. The comments mentioning the billionaire Mafia boss made Arya's blood run cold. Does she even know who Vincent Sterling is? She's dead. She humiliated Nathaniel Blackwood's mother. R.I.P. to this girl. The story wasn't just spreading among ordinary people. In the parts of New York where power and danger intersected, in VIP rooms and private clubs, the tale of the waitress who dared challenge the Sterling family traveled like legend. Some people bet she'd disappear within a week. Some bet the Sterlings would make an example of her. Everyone agreed this was the first time in years someone had publicly humiliated a member of the city's most powerful dynasty. Arya sat in her kitchen chair, staring at the phone like it belonged to someone else. She didn't want fame, didn't want to be the center of a social media war. She only wanted to be treated like a human being. But now it was too late. The whole world knew her face, knew her name. And most importantly, the billionaire Mafia boss knew too. 3 days passed like 3 years. Arya knocked on the doors of 19 different restaurants across Manhattan and Brooklyn, from upscale establishments like Lumiere to corner diners in Queens. The result was always the same. At first, everything seemed promising. Managers looked at her 7 years of experience with impressed eyes, nodded at her flawless record, acted ready to hire her on the spot. Then they asked for her name. The moment Arya Collins left her lips, everything changed. Eyes dimmed. Smiles vanished. Polite rejections followed like rehearsed lines. We'll call you back, but the call never came. The position's been filled, even while the hearing sign hung in the window. You're not quite the right fit, without giving her a chance to prove anything. By the 19th restaurant, a small Italian place in Brooklyn, the manager finally told her the truth. Miss Collins, I'm sorry, but nobody in this industry will hire you. Your name is blacklisted. Everyone knows what you did to Mrs. Sterling. Nobody wants trouble with that family. They can shut down any restaurant with one phone call. I've got a family to feed. I can't risk it. Arya left that restaurant with legs made of lead. She'd known this would happen. Ethan had warned her. But hearing someone say it to her face still hit like a punch to the gut. At home, she opened her savings account and watched the number shrink day by day. This month's rent was paid. But what about next month? The medical debt payment was due in 2 weeks. Ethan's tuition had to be paid within a month. With what she had left, she could survive maybe 6 weeks if she cut everything to the bone. But what came after 6 weeks? Ethan noticed the change even though Arya tried to hide it. He saw her leave at dawn for interviews, saw her return with red eyes and forced smiles, saw her sitting at the kitchen table at midnight, staring at bills. He didn't ask questions, didn't want to add pressure. Instead, he quietly ate less at breakfast, lied that his school had a free lunch program, turned off his bedroom light earlier to save electricity. He also secretly searched online for part-time jobs for high school students. even though he knew Arya would never allow it. On the third night, after Ethan fell asleep, Arya sat alone in the dark and looked around their tiny apartment. It was all they had left of their parents. Not big, not fancy, but home. And now she was considering selling it. If she sold, she could pay off the medical debt and have enough to rent a smaller room while she figured things out. But it would mean giving up the last place that held memories of family dinners, of her mother's laughter, of her father reading the newspaper by the window. Arya dropped her head onto the table, shoulders shaking, not from crying, from exhaustion. She'd fought for her dignity, but the price might be everything she had left. On the morning of the fourth day, Arya stepped out of her apartment building with a new list of addresses in hand. Maybe she'd try New Jersey or Connecticut, places where the Sterling name might not reach as far. She froze. A glossy black Bentley was parked directly in front of her building. The car looked absurdly out of place in the working-class neighborhood, like a diamond in a pile of gravel. The driver's door opened. An Asian man in a perfect black suit stepped out. Arya recognized him instantly from online photos. Daniel Park, the billionaire Mafia boss's right hand. The man who, according to rumors, had made an entire Bronx gang disappear in a single night. She took a step back, spine pressing against the door behind her. "Miss Collins," Daniel said, his tone strangely calm. "I'm not here to hurt you." Arya didn't answer. Her eyes darted left and right, looking for escape routes even though she knew running would be useless. "I have something for you." Daniel reached into his suit pocket. Arya nearly stopped breathing. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a small black business card with gold lettering. He walked closer, stopped at a respectful distance, and held it out. "Vincent Sterling wants to meet you." Arya stared at the card like it was poisonous. "Meet me for what? To threaten me in person?" "No," Daniel replied simply. "Mr. Sterling only wants to talk." Arya let out a bitter laugh. "Talk? The son of the woman I dumped food on wants to talk, and you think I'm stupid enough to believe that?" Daniel didn't look offended. His face remained calm as still water. "Miss Collins, if Mr. Sterling wanted to hurt you, he wouldn't need to send me with a business card. The Sterling name can open every door in this city, and it can close every door too, as you've discovered over the last 3 days." Arya flinched. He knew where she'd interviewed. They'd been watching her from the beginning. "So if it's not a threat, what is it?" she asked. "I don't know," Daniel answered honestly. "Mr. Sterling didn't tell me why. He only said he wants to see you. This is an invitation, not a summons. You have every right to refuse." Arya looked into his eyes, searching for deception. She found only professional indifference. "If I refuse?" "Then I leave and you never see me again." Daniel gestured toward the Bentley. "But if you agree to go now, I can take you there." Arya glanced back at her apartment door, thought of Ethan still asleep inside, of the stack of bills on the table, of the uncertain future waiting ahead. She had nothing left to lose. She'd already lost almost everything. "Fine," she said, surprising herself. "Give me 5 minutes to text my brother." The Bentley glided through Manhattan streets, carrying Arya from working-class Brooklyn into the city's center of power. Daniel didn't speak for the entire ride. Arya didn't have the energy to talk. When the car stopped in front of Sterling Tower, Arya had to tilt her head back until her neck ached just to see the top. 75 floors of glass and steel rose into the sky like a monument to wealth and influence. This was the symbol of sterling power. Daniel led her through a lobby of polished black marble. Employees in perfect uniforms bowed as they passed, eyes flicking toward Arya with carefully hidden curiosity. A private elevator carried them to the 75th floor. Arya's ears rang from the pressure change. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse the size of a warehouse. Soaring ceilings, glass walls overlooking all of Manhattan, furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. "Wait here," Daniel said, then disappeared through an oak door. Arya stood alone, afraid to sit on the expensive leather chairs, afraid to touch anything. Just stood still and tried to control her hammering heart. Then she heard footsteps. Vincent Sterling stepped through the door, and Arya understood immediately why people feared him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled his custom suit. Black hair swept back from a face that looked carved from marble. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that probably hadn't smiled in years. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Steel gray eyes, cold and sharp, cutting straight through her like he could read every thought in her mind. These were the eyes of someone who'd seen too much, done too much, and no longer flinched at anything. "Miss Collins," Vincent said, his voice low and even. "Thank you for coming." Arya swallowed, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I don't think I had much choice, Mr. Sterling." Vincent tilted his head slightly. "You had a choice. Daniel told you this was an invitation, not an order." "Then why did you invite me here?" Arya asked bluntly. "To tell me in person how you're going to ruin my life because I insulted your mother." Vincent didn't answer immediately. He walked to the glass wall and looked down at Manhattan spread beneath him like a kingdom. His back was to her. "I've watched that video many times," he said, "and there's one thing I don't understand." "What?" "Why did you dare to do it?" Vincent turned back to face her. "You knew who my mother is. You knew what my family can do. You knew you'd lose your job and never find another. You knew all of that, and you still did it. Why?" Arya met those cold gray eyes. Strangely, she didn't feel the fear she'd expected. Maybe because she'd already lost too much to fear losing more. "Because I'm not an object for people to step on," she said clearly. "Your mother may be rich, may be powerful, may make this whole city tremble. But that doesn't give her the right to humiliate me. It doesn't give her the right to make me kneel and apologize for something I didn't do." She took a breath. "I may be poor, I may be just a waitress nobody knows, but I'm still a human being. And my dignity isn't for sale, even if the price is everything I have." The room fell silent. Vincent stood motionless, his eyes fixed on her without blinking. But something was changing in that gaze. A small crack in the thick ice he'd built around himself for years. "You know," he said after a long moment, "all my life I've met thousands of people. Politicians, businessmen, the ones the world calls powerful. Every single one of them bows to my family. Every one of them is willing to sell their soul for a little advantage." He paused. "But you, an ordinary waitress, you dared to stand straight and say no. You dared to trade everything just to keep something most people don't even realize they've lost." Then he did something that caught Arya completely off guard. He smiled, not a cold smile, not mocking, but a real smile that made his sharp face look different, younger, more human. "And that makes me very curious about you, Miss Collins." The smile disappeared as quickly as it came. The billionaire Mafia boss returned to his familiar cold expression. He walked to his desk, took out a folder, and set it down in front of her. "I have an offer for you," he said. Arya eyed the folder with suspicion. "What kind of offer?" "Do you know Elevation?" Arya nodded. Everyone in the restaurant world knew Elevation. A 5-star restaurant inside the Sterling Grand Hotel in the heart of Manhattan. A place where a single dinner cost what she used to earn in a month at Lumiere. "The current manager of Elevation just resigned," Vincent continued. "I need someone to replace them. I want that person to be you." Arya thought she'd misheard him. The billionaire Mafia boss, the son of the woman she dumped food on, was offering her a manager position at one of the most exclusive restaurants in New York. "Are you joking?" she finally managed. "I don't joke," Vincent replied. Especially not about business. But why? Arya's voice filled with doubt. I publicly humiliated your mother. That video is everywhere. My name is blacklisted. And you want to hire me? It doesn't make sense. Vincent studied her for a long moment. You have 7 years of experience with a spotless record. Not a single complaint. That's rare. And you have something I look for in a manager but rarely find. What? A spine, Vincent said. Someone who will stand up for what's right even when there's a price to pay. That's the kind of person I need. Someone who won't bow to unreasonable customers just because they're rich. Someone who puts standards and principles above money. Elevation needs someone like that. Arya opened the folder. Her breath caught when she saw the proposed salary. 5 times what she'd made at Lumiere. Enough to pay off the medical debt within 2 years. Enough for Ethan to finish school without worry. Enough for them to live comfortably for the first time in 4 years. But she'd lived long enough to know there was no free lunch, especially when offered by a Mafia kingpin. What do you want from me? Arya asked bluntly, meeting Vincent's eyes. Nobody gives anything for nothing, especially someone like you, so what's the real price? What do you want me to do in exchange for this job? Launder money? Cover illegal activity? Vincent didn't look offended by her directness. Instead, he seemed to reassess her, his sharp gaze moving across her face. You really aren't afraid of anything, he observed. I've lost too much to be afraid of losing more, Arya replied. But I won't sell my soul. I'd rather stay blacklisted than get involved in anything illegal. If that's what you want, you chose the wrong person. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if he'd found the answer he needed. Good, he said. Then here's the deal. You'll manage Elevation like a normal restaurant, fully legal. No laundering, no hiding anything. Your job is to make it the best restaurant it can be. Nothing more, nothing less. And my conditions, Arya said. I won't do anything against my conscience. I won't mistreat staff no matter who the customer is. And if you ask me to do something I believe is wrong, I'll refuse, even if it costs me the job. The billionaire Mafia boss raised an eyebrow, as if he wasn't used to anyone setting terms with him. Are you negotiating with me? I'm protecting my boundaries, Arya replied. That's not negotiable. A tense moment passed. They stared at each other without blinking. 2 people measuring each other. Then Vincent laughed, a small sound from his throat, as if he couldn't quite help it. You really are different, he said. Fine, I agree to all your conditions. You'll have full authority to run Elevation the way you believe is right. I won't interfere with daily operations. If there's any problem, you speak to me directly. He held out his hand. Do we have a deal, Miss Collins? Arya looked at that hand. The hand of a man all of New York feared. The hand that rumors said had done terrible things to enemies. But she also saw opportunity. A chance to change her life and Ethan's. A chance she wasn't sure would come twice. She reached out and took his hand. We have a deal, Mr. Sterling. The billionaire Mafia boss's hand was warm and steady, gripping hers firmly but not hard enough to hurt. And in the moment their hands met, Arya felt something shift. A new door opening in front of her, leading to a road she couldn't see the end of. Call me Vincent, he said. Arya nodded. Then you can call me Arya. The first 2 weeks at Elevation were brutal. The staff watched Arya with suspicious eyes. Some whispered behind her back about the viral video, speculating why the billionaire Mafia boss would hire someone like her. They thought she was Vincent's mistress. Or worse, a tool he was using to punish his mother by deliberately hearing the woman Victoria hated. Arya ignored the rumors. She focused on work, applying everything she'd learned over 7 years and the lessons her parents had taught her. Everyone deserved respect, from the head chef to the dishwasher, from VIP guests to cleaning staff. She met with every employee one-on-one, listened to their struggles, remembered their children's names, asked about their families. She changed schedules so parents could pick up their kids on time, increased break time between shifts, improved staff meals, and most importantly, she protected her people from unreasonable customers. Once, a drunk Wall Street executive shouted at a young server to tears because an appetizer arrived 2 minutes late. Arya walked over, calm but firm, and asked him to leave. When he threatened to call Vincent Sterling, Arya smiled and told him to go right ahead. Then she personally escorted him to the door. The story spread through Elevation like wildfire. After that, the staff's attitude toward the struggling waitress changed completely. They stopped looking at her like an outsider. They started looking at her like a real leader. Elevation's revenue climbed steadily, not because of flashy marketing, but because of simple truth. Happy staff served customers better. Customers who had good experiences came back. 5-star reviews flooded food sites, praising not just the cuisine but the warm, professional service. And Vincent Sterling began appearing more often. At first, he came under the excuse of checking operations. Sat at his usual corner table with whiskey in hand, watching the way Arya ran the restaurant with that sharp, measuring gaze. But little by little, his visits lasted longer, and the excuse of business checks quietly turned into conversations. Those conversations usually began after closing. When the staff had gone home and the restaurant sank into quiet darkness, Arya would pour herself coffee, pour Vincent whiskey, and they'd sit across from each other at the table by the window overlooking Manhattan's glittering streets. They talked about everything, about work, about life, about different ways of seeing the world. Vincent asked about Ethan, about how Arya had raised her brother alone for 4 years, about her parents, and the medical debt she was still fighting to pay. Arya asked about the Sterling Empire, about the weight of inheriting a powerful dynasty, about the loneliness she could see behind his cold eyes. What surprised the billionaire mafia boss most was that Arya never feared speaking honestly. When he made a business decision she believed was wrong, she told him. When he became arrogant or too cold, she pointed it out without hesitation. Once Vincent complained about a partner who dared to reject his offer, his voice edged with threat. Arya set her coffee cup down and looked him straight in the eye. People have the right to say no, even when the one asking is Vincent Sterling. Someone disagreeing with you doesn't mean they're insulting you. Sometimes it only means they have a different view. And a good leader listens to different views instead of threatening people brave enough to speak them. Anyone else who said those words to the billionaire mafia boss would have faced serious consequences. But with Arya, he only went quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right," he admitted. It was the first time in his life Vincent Sterling had admitted he was wrong to another person. Daniel Park, who always stood in the corner whenever Vincent was present, watched it all with amazement he kept carefully hidden. He'd followed Vincent for over 10 years, had seen his boss deal with enemies, partners, women who tried to get close for money and power. But he'd never seen Vincent like this. Never seen his cold boss truly listen to someone, truly laugh at a clever remark, truly open himself about things he'd kept buried for years. The struggling waitress was doing what nobody had ever done. She was touching the real man behind Vincent Sterling's cold mask. And Daniel didn't know if that was good or bad, but he knew one thing for certain. Everything was changing. And when everything changed around the billionaire mafia boss, the whole city would have to change with him. One Friday evening near the end of the month, Ethan showed up at Elevation. Arya was checking the weekend reservation list when the restaurant doors opened, and her 14-year-old brother walked in with his backpack and that familiar bright smile. "Arya, I finished my exam early, so I thought I'd surprise you." Arya was about to rush over and hug him when she noticed Vincent sitting at his usual corner table, whiskey in hand, those gray eyes watching Ethan with open curiosity. Ethan noticed the unfamiliar man, too. He slowed, instinctive guard making him move closer to his sister. "Who's that?" he whispered. Arya drew a breath, unsure how to introduce him. "This is Vincent Sterling, the owner of this restaurant, and this is Ethan, my brother." Ethan's eyes widened at the name Sterling. He realized immediately this was the son of the woman Arya had dumped food on. He looked at Vincent with a wary stare, body going rigid, as if ready to protect Arya at any moment. But instead of acting threatening, the billionaire Mafia boss stood and walked over, his face softening in a way that seemed unusual for him. "So this is the brother Arya talks about," he said. "She told me you want to become a doctor." Ethan didn't answer right away, still measuring the man in front of him. Then he lifted his chin and looked Vincent straight in the eye with courage that went far beyond his 14 years. "Yes, I want to be a doctor so I can help people like my mom, people who don't have enough money to get proper treatment." Vincent tilted his head slightly, something flickering in those cold eyes. "That's a noble goal. How are you doing in school?" "I'm top of my class," Ethan answered without false modesty. "I've got a partial scholarship now, and I'll earn a full scholarship for college. My sister won't have to worry about me." Arya watched her brother, pride swelling in her chest. He'd grown up too fast in 4 years, had carried too much loss and still held onto hope and determination. Vincent studied them for a moment, then turned to Arya. "You should go home with your brother. I don't have anything else to discuss tonight." Arya nodded her thanks and led Ethan out. On the way home, Ethan stayed quiet for a long time before he finally spoke. "The way he looks at you is different." "Different how?" Arya asked. "I don't know how to explain it," Ethan shrugged. "But I've never seen anyone look at you like that, like you're the most precious thing in the room." Arya didn't answer, but her cheeks burned in the dark. A week later, Ethan ran home with a stunned expression. "Arya, the school called me into the office today. They said someone paid all my tuition through graduation. They didn't say who, but they told me I don't have to worry about money anymore. I can just focus on studying." Arya knew immediately who it was. That night, she stayed late at Elevation, waiting for Vincent to appear. When he walked in and took his usual table, she brought his whiskey over and sat across from him. "Why did you do that?" she asked directly. Vincent didn't pretend not to understand. "Because the boy deserves it, and because I can." "I don't need charity," Arya said, her voice edged. "It isn't charity," the billionaire Mafia boss met her eyes. "It's an investment. I invest in people I believe will do something meaningful, and Ethan will become a good doctor. I'm certain of it." Arya wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't need his help. But she looked into those gray eyes and saw something that made her fall silent. No pity, no attempt to buy her, only sincerity she'd never seen in him before. "Thank you," she finally said. Just 2 words, but carrying everything she couldn't turn into language. They sat there talking all night, longer than they ever had before. Vincent told her about his father, the previous Sterling boss, the man who built the empire from nothing, but also taught Vincent that emotions were weakness. "He never hugged me," Vincent said, his voice dropping. "Never said he loved me, only lessons about power and survival. And when he died, I didn't know if I was sad. I only knew I had to take over everything. I had to become the man he wanted me to be." Arya told him about her parents, about the happy years when their family was whole, about her mother's cancer diagnosis, about the sleepless nights in the hospital, about the car accident that stole both her parents in a single moment. When she pulled up her sleeve to show Vincent a scar on her wrist, a memory from an abusive relationship she'd escaped years ago, His eyes darkened dangerously. "Where is he?" he asked, his voice like ice. "You don't need to know," Arya replied. "That's the past. I got through it." Vincent didn't say anything else, but his finger brushed the scar on her wrist, gentle as if afraid of hurting her. And in that moment, under faint streetlight slipping through the glass, Arya saw something she'd never seen in the billionaire mafia boss. Tenderness. They talked until the Manhattan sky shifted from black to purple to pink, until dawn flooded the restaurant and broke the darkness apart. And when they finally left, something between them had changed. An invisible thread linking two lonely hearts that had found each other in a city of millions. News that Vincent had hired Arya as Elevation's manager finally reached Victoria's ears. She learned it from Catherine Wells, who'd gone to the restaurant for dinner and immediately recognized the waitress from the viral video, now running the entire establishment. Catherine called Victoria at once, her voice dripping with malice. "Mrs. Sterling, do you know what your son is doing? He didn't just hire that woman. He's been visiting her almost every day. The whole city's gossiping that they're involved." Victoria nearly smashed her phone. She'd told herself Vincent was only rebelling temporarily, that his interest in that waitress would cool with time. But this, not only hearing her, but seeing her constantly, this was beyond any limit Victoria could tolerate. One Tuesday afternoon, when Elevation was still quiet, the restaurant doors suddenly opened and Victoria Sterling walked in. She wore a luxurious black dress, platinum hair pinned flawlessly, each step in her expensive heels striking marble like a warning. Arya was reviewing tonight's reservation list when she froze. That face had haunted too many sleepless nights. "So this is the little girl who's put a spell on my son," Victoria said loudly, her voice echoing through the restaurant. "I've got to admit, you're cleverer than I thought. You didn't just dump food on my head. You climbed into my son's bed to secure your future." Arya felt heat rush into her face, but she held her anger down. "Mrs. Sterling, please leave my restaurant." "Your restaurant?" Victoria laughed with contempt. "This is the Sterling family's restaurant, my son's restaurant, and you're just a waitress pretending to be a manager." Staff members stopped working, watching with wide eyes. Arya stepped closer, facing Victoria head-on. She didn't back up even 1 inch. "I'll say it one more time, please leave, right now." Victoria moved forward, her gaze vicious. "Who do you think you are?" she whispered low enough that only Arya could hear. "Do you think Vincent truly cares about you? He's only using you to provoke me. And when he's tired of you, you'll be back to being the same penniless waitress you were before." She leaned closer. "But this time, I'll make sure you never raise your head again. Not just you, your precious little brother, too. I heard he's in private school dreaming of becoming a doctor. It would be such a shame if something happened to that dream." Arya felt her blood turn to ice. Victoria had just threatened Ethan. "If you dare touch my brother," Arya said, her voice shaking with rage, "I swear." "What will you do?" Victoria mocked. "Dump another plate on my head." The restaurant doors flew open. Vincent walked in with a face like winter. Daniel came right behind him, clearly having alerted his boss the moment Victoria arrived. "Mother," Vincent said. Just one word, but it carried a storm. Victoria turned to face her son, smile never wavering. "Vincent, perfect timing. I was talking to your employee." "Step outside and talk to me," Vincent cut in, his voice leaving no room for refusal. "Right now." Victoria shot Arya one last threatening look before following Vincent out. They stood on the sidewalk, and the argument exploded. "You've crossed the line," Vincent said. "I warned you not to touch her." "She's using you," Victoria screamed. "I'm your mother, I'm protecting you." "You're protecting your wounded ego," the billionaire mafia boss replied coldly. "Arya isn't using me. She didn't even want to accept help from me. She's the only person in my life who's dared to speak to me straight without fear. The only person who looks at me like a human being instead of a mafia boss or a walking checkbook. Then what am I to you? Victoria demanded, her voice trembling. You're the person who's tried to control my life for 36 years, Vincent said bluntly. You're the person who's never asked what I want, only cared about what I should become by your standards. And now that I've found someone who actually matters to me, you want to destroy it. Victoria stood there stunned, hearing her son say it to her face for the first time. Listen to me, Mother. Vincent stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. If you touch Arya or Ethan, even a single hair, I'll cut you off completely. I'll strip your access to the family's assets. I'll make sure you have no influence left in this society. And you know I can do it. You know I don't make empty threats. Victoria looked into her son's eyes, and for the first time in years, she saw absolute seriousness there. You'll regret this, she said, but the confidence was gone. No, Mother, Vincent replied. The only thing I regret is that I didn't stand up to you sooner. He turned and walked back into the restaurant, leaving Victoria alone on the Manhattan sidewalk. And for the first time in her life, she realized she could truly lose her son. Victoria Sterling wasn't the kind of woman who accepted defeat. After the confrontation outside Elevation, she went home with her heart packed with rage and humiliation. Her own son had chosen a waitress over his mother, had threatened to cut her off because of a woman Victoria considered beneath notice. She sat in her mansion's grand living room, draining one glass of wine after another. And in her drunken haze, she made a decision she would regret for the rest of her life. She called Anton Volkov, boss of the Russian crime family competing with the Sterlings for power along the East Coast. The Volkovs and Sterlings had been at odds since Vincent's father's time, a Cold War smoldering for years. Anton, Victoria said into the phone, her voice thick with alcohol. I have information for you. My son has a weakness. A waitress named Arya Collins and her little brother. Vincent cares about them more than anything else. If you want leverage on my son, that's how. Victoria didn't think about consequences, didn't think about betraying her own blood. She only wanted Arya gone from her son's life at any cost. 3 days later, Ethan vanished. The boy didn't come home after school. Arya called his phone dozens of times, only endless ringing. She called the school. They said Ethan had left at 3 o'clock as usual. She called his friends. No one had seen him. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. Arya began to truly panic. At 8 that night, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number arrived with a photo that made her heart stop. Ethan sat on a wooden chair, hands tied behind his back, mouth sealed with tape, eyes wide with terror. The message underneath read, "Tell your lover we want to talk. If police show up, the boy dies." Arya collapsed onto the floor, her legs no longer strong enough to hold her up. She didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there trembling, staring at the image of her brother bound like an animal. For the first time in 4 years, Arya completely lost control. She didn't know what to do, didn't know who to call, didn't know how to save her brother. With shaking hands, she called Vincent. He answered after the first ring. "Arya!" His voice filled with concern the moment he heard her ragged breathing. "What's wrong?" "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They took Ethan. They sent me a picture. Vincent, please, I don't know what to do." "Where are you?" Vincent's voice turned to steel instantly. "At home." "Don't go anywhere. I'm coming now." Vincent hung up and turned to Daniel with a look his right hand had never seen before. In those gray eyes, there was no usual calm, only cold, ruthless fury waiting to be unleashed. "Volkov," Vincent said, just that one word. Daniel nodded. He'd suspected it the moment he heard Ethan was missing. "Mobilize everyone," the billionaire Mafia boss ordered. I want to find where they're holding the boy within 1 hour. Contact every source we have, promise them whatever money they want, and tell the men to be ready. There will be blood tonight. Within 15 minutes, the entire Sterling underworld empire was on high alert. Enforcers summoned from across the city. Weapons prepared. Vehicles arranged. This wasn't business. This was war. Vincent reached Arya's apartment in record time. He found her curled on the living room floor, phone in hand, eyes locked on Ethan's photo without blinking. He crouched in front of her, gripping her shaking shoulders. "Arya, look at me. I'm bringing Ethan back. I promise you. No one touches what's mine and lives." Arya looked up at him, eyes red but dry, as if too terrified to cry. "I can't lose him. Ethan is all I have left. If anything happens to him, I won't survive it." "You won't lose him," Vincent said, his hand cupping her cheek, his voice set like steel. "I'll make sure of it, even if I have to burn this whole city down." Daniel's phone rang. He listened for a moment, then turned to Vincent. "We found them. Abandoned warehouse at the Brooklyn docks. At least 12 guards." Vincent rose, his face hardening into the cold mask of a killer. "Let's go." Brooklyn's docks lay swallowed by darkness at midnight. The abandoned warehouse sat at the far end, an old brick structure now serving as a den for the men who dared to kidnap someone the billionaire Mafia boss cared about. Black vehicles stopped 300 meters away, silent as ghosts. Vincent stepped out. Daniel handed him a handgun. Vincent checked the magazine, tucked it behind his back, his gray eyes sweeping over the warehouse ahead. 12 men, Daniel murmured. 4 guards outside, 8 inside. The boys on the second floor, northeast corner. Vincent nodded. "I want one alive for questioning. The rest don't matter." 20 Sterling gunmen moved like shadows through the night. The 4 guards outside were taken down in silence. Vincent led the main assault, kicked the rusted iron door off its hinges, stepped inside like death itself. Gunfire exploded in the enclosed space, every shot precise, lethal. The billionaire Mafia boss moved with terrifying calm, dropping one man who aimed at him, dodging a bullet from the left, answering with 2 shots to the attacker's chest. This was the other side of Vincent Sterling, the side hidden behind expensive suits and polite smiles at charity dinners. The monster his father had created. The monster willing to kill without hesitation to protect what belonged to him. The raid lasted less than 10 minutes. 8 men lay motionless on cold concrete, blood spreading into dark pools. Only one was still breathing, shot in the leg by Daniel and cuffed for interrogation. Vincent climbed the stairs to the second floor, kicked open the door in the northeast corner. Ethan sat on the wooden chair exactly as in the photo, hands still bound, mouth still taped, but his eyes lit up when he saw Vincent. Vincent stepped forward, gently peeled the tape from Ethan's mouth, then cut the ropes. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Ethan answered, voice shaking but forcing strength into it. "They didn't do anything, just threatened me. Where's Arya?" "She's waiting at home, safe." Vincent helped the boy to his feet. "I'm taking you back to her right now." Ethan suddenly threw his arms around Vincent, his shoulders trembling. "I was so scared. I tried to be brave, but I was scared they'd kill me." Vincent went still for a moment, not used to being held like that. Then he slowly placed a hand on Ethan's back. "You're safe now. No one can hurt you anymore. I promise." Daniel put Ethan in the car to bring him home. Vincent stayed behind to interrogate the one man still alive. He crouched in front of him, gray eyes cold as winter frost. "Who told you about the boy and the girl?" The man spat blood onto the floor. "I don't know anything." Vincent pulled a knife from inside his jacket. "I'll ask again, and every time I hear the wrong answer, I'll cut off a finger. When I run out of fingers, I'll move to toes. I have all night." Fear flashed across the man's face. "All right, a woman. She called Boss Volkov. She said she was your mother." Vincent froze. His mother. His own mother had handed information to the enemy so they could kidnap an innocent 14-year-old child. "What did she say?" Vincent asked, his voice hollow. "She said you had a weakness. The waitress and her little brother. She said if the boss wanted leverage on you, that was how." Vincent stood, turned, and walked away. He stepped out of the warehouse, drew in the cutting cold air, and felt something inside him die forever. He pulled out his phone and called the family's lawyer. "I want you to do what I told you last week," Vincent said coldly. "Cut off my mother's access to the family assets completely. Freeze every account. Cancel her credit cards. Make sure she can't touch a single dollar of Sterling money ever again." "Mr. Sterling, she's your mother. Are you sure?" "She's not my mother anymore," the billionaire mafia boss replied. "From this moment on, Victoria Sterling is dead to me." When the car brought Ethan back to their Brooklyn apartment, Arya had been waiting at the door. She rushed out and wrapped her arms around her brother, squeezing so tight Ethan gasped that he couldn't breathe. But Arya didn't let go, just held him, tears sliding down her cheeks, her whole body trembling with relief. "I'm okay, sis," Ethan whispered. "Vincent saved me." Arya lifted her head and looked at Vincent, standing a few steps away, still in his black suit now speckled with blood, his face exhausted but his eyes softening as he watched them. She slowly released Ethan, walked up to Vincent, and without a word hugged him. Vincent went still for a second. Then his arms slowly closed around her, holding tight as if afraid she'd disappear. They stood there in the freezing Brooklyn night, holding each other like two people who'd survived a storm. "Thank you," Arya whispered against his chest. "Thank you for saving Ethan. Thank you for keeping your promise." Vincent didn't answer. He just held her tighter. Then he placed a hand beneath her chin, lifted her face, and under the pale yellow streetlight he looked into her eyes, still red from crying. "I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you," he said, his voice rough with emotions he wasn't used to showing. "I've lived 36 years without truly caring about anyone, but now I can't imagine a life that doesn't have you in it." Arya looked into those gray eyes that had once been cold as a blizzard, and were now warm in a way she'd never seen before. She didn't speak, just rose onto her toes and pressed her lips to his. Their first kiss was gentle, soft, not rushed, not demanding, just two lonely souls who had finally found each other. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching them with a huge grin, deciding this was the perfect moment to slip inside and give them space. 5 years after that fateful night at Lumiere, Arya Sterling sat in the familiar black Bentley, watching through the window as they pulled up to the very restaurant where everything had begun. She wasn't the anxious 27-year-old waitress weighed down by worry anymore. Now she was Arya Sterling, Vincent's wife, co-owner of the upscale restaurant group called Collins and Elevation, a successful businesswoman respected throughout the industry. Vincent opened the car door for her and took her hand as she stepped out. He was still as striking and coldly handsome as the day they met, but his gray eyes were always warm whenever they landed on her. The platinum wedding band on his finger glinted under Manhattan streetlights. Ethan stepped out behind them. Now 19, tall and confident, in his second year at Columbia Medical School on a full scholarship. He'd achieved his dream, and Arya knew their parents were smiling from somewhere above. The last person to step out made anyone who remembered the old story blink in disbelief. Victoria Sterling. Now 70, her hair completely silver, her face far gentler than the arrogant woman she'd once been. After 4 years of therapy, volunteering at shelters for abused women, and proving her change day by day, she'd slowly been welcomed back into the family, with clear boundaries. James Morrison, still the manager at Lumiere, nearly collapsed when he saw Arya walk in. "Mrs. Sterling, it's an honor to welcome you." Arya smiled. "A table for 4, Mr. Morrison." They sat at the best table in the restaurant, the very one Victoria had sat at 7 years earlier. Arya looked around the familiar dining room, remembering every corner where she'd once worked. Remembering late nights when her feet ached, but she still forced smiles for customers. Remembering the moment she'd lifted that duck plate and changed her life forever. Who would have thought a plate of food dumped on someone's head could lead to all of this? Victoria said, her voice carrying self-mocking humor. A family, a business empire, and a mother-in-law with better manners. Everyone laughed. 5 years ago, Arya couldn't have imagined sitting at dinner with Victoria without wanting to dump something on her again. But people could change, and Victoria had proven it. "Arya," Ethan said, lifting his glass, "I want to toast you. For everything you've done for me, for never giving up no matter how hard life got, and for teaching me that dignity is the most precious thing a person has. No one has the right to take it away, and you should never trade it for anything." Arya felt her eyes sting. She held Vincent's hand on her left, Ethan's on her right, looked at Victoria across from her. This was her family, built from ashes of tragedy, bound together by forgiveness and growth. Vincent lifted his glass, to second chances, and to people brave enough to change. Victoria nodded, her eyes shimmering, and to people kind enough to give others the chance to change. She looked at Arya with deep gratitude. They clinked their glasses. Arya stared into the red wine glowing in candlelight. She remembered the red wine Victoria had poured onto her own dress 7 years ago, remembered the injustice of that night, and realized life had a strange way of turning its darkest moments into the beginning of something bright. Sometimes we have to lose everything to gain everything. Sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves even when the consequences could be terrifying. And sometimes the people we think are our enemies become family. That's the story of Arya Collins, the struggling waitress who dared to stand up for her dignity in the face of power and wealth, and who, in the end, found the happiness she deserved. My dear friend, this story teaches us that dignity isn't for sale, that people can change if they truly want to, and that life always offers second chances to those brave enough to take them. How do you feel about this story? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for your self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly love to hear the stories from deep in your heart. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more moving stories every day. Wishing you and your family good health, joy, and peace. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.